The year is 2014. You're scrolling on YouTube after a long day in elementary school, spent stabbing your eraser and neglecting to learn your multiplication tables. You open up the search bar, enter a simple word, Markiplier. After a brief period of searching through the recent uploads, you click on the video you've watched more times than you can count. The one you can probably quote word for word. Warning, scariest game in years, Five Nights at Freddy's, Part 1. This was an experience that seemed universal during this time. It seemed that you were either obsessed with the game or you were terrified of the jump scare-ridden nightmare fuel that was Five Nights at Freddy's. Personally, I was the latter, but I eventually got into it when I was older. I was a sensitive kid, alright? I used to be afraid of Halloween in 2nd grade because I didn't like the masks that the 3rd graders wore. Five Nights at Freddy's was a pivotal moment in history that would change millions of childhoods, and some would attribute Markiplier's booming success to the game franchise. Five Nights at Freddy's went on to have many games, some better and some worse, and form an incredibly intricate, convoluted lore storyline. This is what I believe many found most interesting about it in the early days. The little hints towards lore that were scattered around the games made people want to know more. They wanted to know why there was supposedly a smell coming from the animatronics, what happened to the phone guy after night 4, and what the heck is the bite of 87? All of this would eventually be answered by playing the first handful of games. However, in the later games, the FNAF lore would start to take a dive off the deep end. There would be more and more itsy-bitsy hints hidden in the most obscure FNAF source material, and you really had to go looking for it if you wanted to stay on the same page as the majority of the fan base. It became difficult to understand the extent of the lore and what it all really meant if you were solely a player of the games, or if you didn't keep up to date on all the newest theories on it. Many context clues originated from the books, of which there are many, and seeing that they're generally written for middle grade readers would be an unenjoyable read for many. Because of this, the lore was lost on many of the content creators who would play the later games. Thankfully, for a while, the gameplay was not dependent on knowledge of the lore and was generally a point-and-click type of game with basic rules. Listen to the person on the intercom or phone, follow instructions, keep yourself safe from the animatronics for 5 nights or so, and don't get jump scared. Save for Help Wanted, Pizzeria Sim, and FNAF World. This was the formula you had to follow in order to succeed in the game. Just keep that fact in mind for later. It all led up to this. Steelable Studios released promotional material for their second FNAF game, the first being Help Wanted. The game was titled Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, and was really a step away from what we understood the game franchise to be up until this point. The first big change that was noticed was the 2 iconic characters missing from the main lineup, Bonnie and Foxy. The characters have been replaced by 2 new animatronics, Roxanne Wolf and Montgomery Gator. The reason for Bonnie's disappearance is alluded to in the game, and I'll go over that in greater detail in the section where I discuss lore. However, Foxy's physical absence isn't easily explained. In fact, fans have attempted to speculate on it and have found nothing of significance. Either way, these new characters certainly brought a lot of interest to the new game, along with the appearance of the setting. The new game appeared to take place in an 80s themed mall, the animatronics adopting more sleek designs derived from the glam rock aesthetic that was popular in that era. This also made them appear much less nightmare fuel-y. A feature that had also been advertised as the big change in what we understood FNAF gameplay to be. Security Breach was going to be a huge, free roam type of game with loads of things to interact with and ways to explore the environment. This basically made the game have loads of possibilities and fun ways to explore the franchise, giving us the ability to actually experience a Freddy Fazbear location as if we were a guest. In the promotional material, a new character would also appear frequently. A character dressed in a patchwork bunny costume was a focal point of the game, as it seemed. This seemed like a brand new character to anyone not caught up on lore. However, well-versed fans knew this was the first time we physically see Vanny, or who theorists referred to as the reluctant follower. Without getting too deep into the convoluted lore, Vanny has essentially been brainwashed by William Afton, aka Purple Guy, the security guard who initially committed the infamous murders that spawned the rest of the game lore. Vanny is now carrying out basically the same thing that William Afton did, murdering children in an attempt to do something? This is where my lore knowledge gets a bit fuzzy, so forgive me. So, it seems, based on the huge amount of promotional material around her, Vanny should be the main antagonist of the game. So, fans were super excited for it. All these new features made people talk about it non-stop. New animatronics we've never met, new antagonists we've never met, and a whole open world to explore and interact with. The game was sure to be a smash hit and would likely go on to be acclaimed by fans everywhere. Instead, we got this.
Because that's... Oh, what? What?
FNAF Security Breach was a buggy, glitchy mess. And you'd best believe me when I say this did not go unnoticed by people who played the game. Nearly every review you can find of this game states how unbelievably buggy it is, and how frustrating that makes the game. However, you'll notice that it still has glowing reviews, currently standing at a 97% recommendation rating when referencing Google. This is due to the fact that despite Security Breach being messy, very not clean-cut, and sometimes even unplayable due to the glitches, clear spots shine through of what the game could be with more time spent in development. You can really tell that there was love put into this game and how much the developers really wanted to do with it. I think it's such a cool concept to have the animatronics in a huge mall run by a corrupt corporation that has questionable business practices and is somehow still in business despite its many, many lawsuits and scandals. Keeping this in mind, I think it's the pre-existing love that fans have for the franchise that really allowed Security Breach to succeed against all odds. So, to try and explain this, I'm going to go over the things I think Security Breach does well versus the things I think it falls short on. I think giving the animatronics more sleek designs was really the right way to go here. It gives them a safe feeling, like they're actually meant to protect the kids they're being put in charge of, instead of giving them a terrifying death machine look that makes me understand why the crying child was scared of them. It makes the fact that they're hunting you so off-putting, as they look similar to Freddy, who's helping you. It makes it clear that something's wrong with them. They're diverting from what Freddy is. It also makes it more jarring when they come back after being decommissioned, as they're now withered and broken and they actually feel dangerous. The idea of a huge mall to explore is so fitting for the FNAF series, and I think it was genius. From a lore perspective, it makes you wonder how the hell Fazbear Entertainment is still so successful, and presumably has lots of customers in order to support such a large space. And now this might be unpopular opinion, but it makes you feel less secure. I mean, yeah, you can run from the animatronics now, but it's so large and such a complicated map that it's easy to get lost and make you feel unsafe and out in the open. A big world, after all, is something that a lot of people are terrified of. These, to me and to others, were the most authentic parts of the game. A real FNAF feel to them, the classic point-and-click mechanic returning to the series, and it was just so good. It was scary, it was adrenaline pumping, it was very suspenseful, and it was really fun to play through them and watch other people play through them. The sections of the game where you played a red light, green light type game with the activated endoskeletons were absolutely terrifying, and I think they were excellently executed. The blink of their red eyes in the darkness, how you would turn to look at them and see that they moved incredibly fast, the way they could open doors if they were at the right angle. It was also scary and perfect, and it really reminded me of the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, and I know that other people have likened them to that, and it was so good. Freddy's voice lines are very well done, for not only the mundane lines, but also the ones that pertain more to the lore.
I know what this is. I have been here before. She brought me here. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I did not want to, but I had no choice. Now I have a choice. I have changed. My friends are here. They are so angry, confused. But I can protect you. I am not me.
This line is read very well and almost feels like a scene from a movie or something. There are tons more examples, but I think Freddy's character and voice lines are excellent in this game. The lore of this game is mostly well done. While I think the main story for this game was lost with overambition and got pushed to the background as a result, the general additions to lore seem to be well done. Bonnie's discontinuation is an interesting piece of lore that I honestly really love. Freddy's best friend is gone, and we don't know quite why. There are a few theories floating around, but I won't get into those. I just think the idea of Bonnie being discontinued because of an incident is so authentic to FNAF lore, and it may be a piece we need for future lore explorations. Getting most of the lore from messages and emails you find around the Pizzaplex is such a good thing. This way you don't know all the facts, as it's assumed the receiver of the messages already has context. It's such a fun way to receive lore and find a way to piece it together yourself. The appearance of the living room from Sister Location and the FNAF 6 pizzeria is such a huge thing, especially as the pizzeria is hinted at as early as entering Roxy Raceway. The message about building over a sinkhole is a great piece of foreshadowing that even I didn't notice until watching a second Let's Play. I have no idea what any of it means, but I just think it's such a cool inclusion to the lore that it was really well done. How to get to the living room was really cool to me as well. It was so fun having to take pictures of every cutout, and that was such a fun game and addition. If you end up with all the discs, the lore payoff is really worth it as well. Reappearance of characters and Easter eggs and stuff was also something I wanted to note. I quite enjoyed seeing the reoccurring characters in the game that I didn't expect to see, such as the big old blob of previous animatronics under the Pizzaplex. I also liked the Easter egg, although it's probably going to be a lore thing eventually, of the staff bots in the stairwell forming the Afton family. The glitches of this game are of course the hardest thing to ignore. Watch any playthrough and you'll see tons of bugs, especially Markipliers. Animatronics spawning in at irregular rates, teleporting, and sometimes just breaking the game altogether makes the game sometimes unplayable, and having to restart is very frustrating, especially if you haven't saved in a while. And that brings me to my next point. There really should have been some sort of autosave feature. As I said, it can be very frustrating to have to completely reboot the game because of a crashed jump scare that only happened because of a bug. I realize this defeats the purpose of having manual save stations, but it could really make the game that much more enjoyable. The game should have autosave not only during cutscenes, but also when you're beginning a long sequence such as the endoskeletons or any of the decommissioning sequences. Some people could find this frustrating though, so I think there should just be an option before the beginning of the game to decide whether you'd like autosave turned on or not. the map is barely functional in this game, and honestly it looks like it serves no purpose. There are no tags on locations, so when you're looking for a specific place, good luck finding it unless you're familiar with the Pizzaplex layout. It would even be useful if there was a tag for the mission you're working on. In most other games similar to this one, where there's an open exploratory world that has a map, such as Final Fantasy or Breath of the Wild, there's a mechanic to select a mission, and then your map will point you in the direction of your next target for the mission. There could even be a manual tag option where you pick yourself where to tag something on the map, like a collectible or a message you want to come back for later. Cameras are also very little help, as you don't even get to know where in the room they're equipped. You don't know what angle the cameras are set up at, so unless you're familiar with your surroundings, it's impossible to know exactly what you're looking at. There should be a dot or arrow or something showing which direction the characters are pointing, so you get more help from hiding from an animatronic. Some rooms are even pitch dark, and the cameras in those rooms are no help whatsoever. Those areas should have a collectible upgrade available to activate night vision cameras or something along those lines. This not only enhances gameplay, but also increases your chance of surviving the night. I think this game was meant to be much more cohesive and larger than it currently is. There are aspects that are hardly there, and things that I think were meant to be expanded on, but were pushed to the side to favor a hasty release. Realistically, the gameplay of decommissioning each animatronic one by one and essentially choosing an ending is quite simple. Yeah, I realize the real story comes after that if you choose to stay, but it still feels too cut and dry. Even with the Afton ending in the FNAF 6 pizzeria, I have too many questions and there are too many loose ends. Decommissioning the other animatronics takes up more than half the game, yet it feels the messiest and the least put together. I can see what it's trying to accomplish, and in concept it's very cool, but I expected a little more from the game. I wish it explained more about the other animatronics and made it clear that they had been hacked. I also wish Vanessa's role was better developed. We know Gregory doesn't trust her, but he doesn't explain why. Gregory mentions disappearances, but that's literally never mentioned before that, and we're expected to know what he means. We can take context clues that kids are going missing from the Pizzaplex, but it doesn't explain why Gregory thinks it's his problem, or why he felt he should go there to check it out, despite him being a child himself and putting himself in danger. I feel like the story falls apart when you try to piece together the why. Why is Gregory not in the database? Why was he in the Pizzaplex? Why did he think getting in Freddy's stomach hatch was smart? None of this was explained. There should have been a newspaper clipping at the beginning of the game, like in previous games, with an article explaining the disappearances. And then there can be a playable section of Gregory sneaking into the Pizzaplex or whatever, and then the game can continue on as we know it. Vanny was disappointing. She was advertised to be a huge character, but she's hardly seen, and really in general she's not a threat. If her backstory was better explained, I think it would make her more interesting, and she would better suit the promotional material of her. Most Let's Players that I watched did not know who Vanny was, and they never did figure it out, and that should not have been the case. I think if she's going to be advertised as the main villain, she should have had much more screen time, more story devoted to her, more talk devoted to her. Even the daycare attendant had more screen time than her, and that's not even funny. If you want her to be a big bad, you have to make her the big bad. You have to commit to what you want the story to be. Security Breach seems to be fairly evenly divided on good things and bad things, and the next question is why? Why is the game so sloppily put together? That question is easily answered when looking at the timeline. FNAF Security Breach was first planned to be released in 2019. Now, 2 years later, it's a buggy mess. The release date was continuously pushed out as Steelwool had bigger dreams for it and wished for it to be complete before releasing it. Now look where we are. I believe the game should have been released even later than it was, as is evident from the amount of complaints I have about it. I can't imagine Steel Wool didn't notice these faults. The best thing I can conclude is that they simply wanted to meet the pre-Christmas release date so people could buy it for Christmas and Steel Wool could make more on it. However, I really think that Security Breach should have spent at least another year in the oven to cook. It should have been test run much more, maybe released to a select few people who could review it and Steel Wool could rework it to be improved. They really rushed this game to meet not their standards, as it's clear by the fact that they knew they wanted it to be bigger, but to meet a quota. And instead of a polished Mona Lisa of FNAF games, we got the disappointing masterpiece that is Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Despite all odds, Security Breach has managed to reach huge acclaim from fans everywhere. There's no doubt that this game is jam-packed with personality. The visuals are fun to look at, the experience is one of a kind, and even the side characters are charming and engaging. I honestly do enjoy this game, and I think it's one of my favorites from the franchise. However, I recognize that it's not without faults. Security Breach has simply been another victim of companies sacrificing quality for quantity, and I really do hope it earns itself a re-release in the future so it can be improved upon, maybe even with new features to explore, much like FNAF World. I certainly hope it continues to be a franchise filled with love and personality, and it does not fall victim to even more corporate greed. With that all said, I'm going to leave it here for today. If you watched or played Security Breach, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments. As usual, if I missed anything or said anything incorrect, please feel free to politely correct me. Any articles I used for research are linked in the description. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like and hit subscribe if you want to see more in the future. Stay safe and stay cool. This has been DinoSpunk, and I'll see you all next time.